To Dr. VFuller, the athletic director at Tennessee State University. And of course, Dr. Fuller, before we had our break, we were talking about some of the efforts that will have to be used in order to encourage more of our young people to establish goals. But let's look at the plant that you operate at Tennessee State University as the athletic director, and give our audience some idea of exactly what we're talking about when we talk about the athletic program at Tennessee State University, some of the sports and some of the issues and that kind of information.
One of the things that excited me about Tennessee State University, which I hear people talk about so passionately as TSU, is the broad-based program. Not only do we have football, men's and women's basketball, we have tennis, we have golf, we have softball, track and field, and we have 14 different sports, 7 men and 7 women. As an athletic director coming in, you want to look at program or the programmatic aspect of it and say, how in the world can you have all of those programs to be successful at one time? One of the things that I think is looking at broad-based, when you look at broad-based programs, you have to put a system in place as it relates to funding, as it relates to program administration. We also have to look at the personnel needs, and also the big issue right now is budgets as it relates to fiscal integrity and also gender equity. Equity is a big component in which we have to take a look at, simply because there's no other sport that equalizes football on the women's side. So we have to make sure that we provide equitable opportunities, not only to men, but also the underrepresented. And in this case, a lot of cases, it's women and other ethnic or minority groups.
And so there's a real concern in terms of trying to make sure that you have enough finance. I think you mentioned the fact that football sort of outweighs everything, and it sort of mess up the formula in terms of gender, does it not?
Well, when you look at gender equity and you look at the squad size of football, I think as an athletic director, you're looking at ways where you can be both economically feasible, and you can also make sure the budget is effective. The state of Tennessee has some systems in place in which you can look at some equity funding. My goal and my job is to make sure those opportunities are equitable. One of the things I'll look at right away are media publications. Do we provide media publications for all of our sports? The other thing I'll look at is locker room facilities. I'll also look at uniforms, clothing. I'll look at travel schedule. I'll look at dollars. I'll look at per diems per team, etc. You know, those are some of the ways that you can come in compliance. I'll look at training tables. Are we offering training tables for one sport and not the other? Or will I look at more of an extensive meal plan? Those are the kind of things that you can look at right away in your own facility and you can control.
Now, does the NCAA require, you said the kind of things that you look up when you talk about compliance, has the NCAA gone on record in terms of demanding that these things happen in terms of gender equity or what?
I was part of the 1993 NCAA Gender Equity Task Force, which was formulated by the NCAA. There were 48 members on that committee, and it was probably the hardest committee I've ever worked on. And we came up with a set of operating principles and guidelines to provide to institutions. That is the tool or the blueprint that I will be taking a look at to guide Tennessee State into the next millennium. One of the things we have to realize, men's program is about 50 years old as it relates to the NCAA, and women's programs are about 30 years old. So I mean, there is a significant gap between programs. Now, how do you raise one program to the next level? First, look at the things that you can control as an institution. Are you doing those things that are equitable and fair? If you and I were brothers and sisters, and I had a cupcake, our mother gave us a cupcake, and our mother told us that you had to divide that cupcake equally. You would try your best to make sure you cut it right down the middle, because guess what? You're going to get a piece of the pie, and I'm going to get a piece of the pie, and you don't want me to have your pie, but you want as much of the pie that's yours. So those are the type of things that I'm talking about that as administrators we have to look at.
And of course it's already laid out there, the pie is already there, but it has to be cut. And of course oftentimes there's not enough pie in a real sense to go around. And I think that brings us to one of the other areas that you mentioned, and that's fundraising. I think that one of the real questions that has always plagued historically black institutions dealing with the athletic program is the ability to bring the kind of money and the kind of financial support outside of the institution. This is especially true when you talk about state-supported institutions. Somehow people believe that if it's state-supported, then the state's going to pay for everything from football cliques on up and etc. But now, how are you finding the reception in terms of financial support and financial activities and financial efforts, fundraising, I guess?
I'm out there right now talking to people, and I'm talking to people about Tennessee State University. We have not done an extensive effort in athletics to raise funds. We have started some of those mechanisms. What I plan to do is to go in and take a look at what we already have and see how we can enhance that. I think it's the market and promotion. Tennessee State has its own niche in the marketplace. 57 Olympians, more Olympians in the world have come out of this state. 103 NFL players. You had about 17 players that played in the Negro League, and you have one player who is in the NBA. You also, Tennessee State has made not only a contribution to itself, but to the state of Tennessee. I don't know why there's not a sign where it says "Welcome to Tennessee," where it doesn't say "Home of the 57 Olympians." I don't know why there's not a banner here or something, or street that's not named Olympic Row.
But simply because Tennessee State has...
Because of Tennessee State. That is a strong wealth of sport history. Those were women. And we have to really realize that historically black schools offered opportunities to women before some of these other institutions. Tennessee State, Florida A&M, these were the institutions that led the pace for women in athletics.
And of course, if you can develop that as a theme, you feel that you can bring in more support for your effort as well.
I think we've taken a step further. Look at the marketplace. Who is in the marketplace? Tennessee State graduates stay in the state of Tennessee. They get jobs in the state. They're in the metro school system. They're also in these factories and these plants, UPS, etc. So Tennessee State has provided product to the marketplace. So that's how I think you go out and sell that.
Very good. You know, Dr. Fuller, we're coming up to the second commercial break, and it seems that time really does fly in dealing with this, but when we come back, what we want you to do during this final segment is to sort of give our audience some idea as to what is happening in the sports scene around Nashville. You know, we've got all of this activity, the stadium and et cetera and whatnot, and for the longest we were, it was pretty difficult to get anybody on that side from Tennessee State University to commit to the Oilers and to the stadium and et cetera, primarily because we wanted to enhance the present stadium on campus. But I think that has sort of outrun us now, and there is sort of a commitment to that stadium activity. And so we want you to talk about that when we come back, and we'll be back with you following this second commercial break.